demonstrated their most serious response level.
After an outbreak of a new type of viral pneumonia
in central China.
Named the disease COVID-19.
World health officials this morning are reporting the first coronavirus death outside of China.
Italy has the
coronavirus officially hitting the U.S. Here's what we know.
Days after the virus hit New York, on March 11th, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic.
To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
More than 120,000 known cases in 114 countries.
And things will get worse than they are right now.
A national emergency.
Back to normal. That's what people want to know. When does that happen?
The only thing that will really allow life as we once knew it to resume is a vaccine.
This will be the new normal until a vaccine is developed.
You have to get about 70 to 85% of the population vaccinated. If you get that many people vaccinated, you will have what we call an umbrella or a blanket of herd immunity.
That means the vaccines will get us to the end of this.
But we're not going to get there unless people get vaccinated.
In a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
The
reason we're here is because people have not gotten vaccinated, 80 million of them.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us.
Don't get the vaccine, you can't go to the supermarket. Don't have the vaccine, you don't show it, can't go to the ball game. Don't have the vaccine, can't go to work. You don't have the vaccine.
The absurdity of what we lived through it's really unfathomable to me.
The world went mad. They went completely mad, but they went mad because of unrelenting propaganda and censorship.
None of it made any sense. Children playing instruments inside tents, wearing masks, and they're blowing into horns. Like, you go to a restaurant, you wear a mask, you take it off, and you eat and you breathe. None of it made sense.
A lot of this started with fear, right? That's how they got people to comply. And I was frankly shocked. And they wore the masks, and they stood 6 feet apart, and they stayed locked down in their house, and they took the shot.
Yeah, I'm ready.
That was easy.
Friends star Jennifer Aniston is cutting ties with people in her life who are unvaccinated.
We have to stop coddling the morons who will not get the shot.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated? F them, f their freedom. I want my freedom to live.
They are all snowflakes and cowards and idiots and losers.
I just want to say to all of you cowards out there, don't be such a chicken squat.
If you're willing to walk among us unvaccinated, you are an enemy.
The persecution worked, and people that I knew that I thought would never get a vaccine ended up getting a COVID shot.
For those of us who got the vaccine, we know, look, now I can stand here with my mask off and have this conversation with you.
A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus.
Vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick.
We get to herd immunity from a vaccine.
The virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else.
That's how you get to herd immunity, not by letting everybody get infected.
People are believing the information that they're being fed. They're not questioning it. They're trusting the sources, where it's coming from, and those sources are not to be trusted. And, prior to COVID, I trusted those sources.
It's a shorter list to tell you what was true than, to tell you about all the lies. Everything was a lie about the vaccine, about the masks, about the tests, about the lockdowns, about school closures, about the safety, about the efficacy.
The government was lying, the media was lying, and they're still lying.
They're telling us the unvaccinated are dying in hospital. They're telling us the unvaccinated are spreading this disease.
Everything we were told was a lie.
There were so many lies during COVID. It was just wave after wave after wave.
All these things that don't add up. So there's only one thing left for us to do. We need to get a bus and get back out on the road and find out for ourselves what is going on. Because only the people will tell us the truth. We knew that from the last bus. So it was time to get back out again. So on the first bus, we started to sign the names. So we were honouring the people that had been injured or killed by vaccinations. And these were approved vaccinations on the first tour. So they would sign the names on the bus and it would fill the bus up.
I think that bus had been incredibly important in uncovering the extent of vaccine injury.
So we went to Children's Health Defence and said, we need a bus. And they said yes.
See the bus for the first time? There it is!
There she is.
And thank God for Children's Health Defence because they managed to fund the bus and we were able to get out on the road. I must add, in much more style than the last bus. Are we live? Excellent. We're live here in Houston, Texas, with a huge announcement. It's a long-awaited, so much hard work behind the scenes to make this happen. So we here at Children's Health Defence are going to go back out on the road from September. We are going to push on through and speak to every single one of you. What have you been through? We are Children's Health Defence. What have your children been through COVID? Through all of the issues that we've had over these last few years, we want to hear all of your stories. So the first thing we did was we turned up at an event, and it wasn't the beginning of the tour. It was just a little surprise visit. We are live at a secret location. I cannot tell you where we are. There were droves of vaccine injured. So that's when I was thinking, okay, we really are going to go out there and hear just tons of COVID or vaccination injuries and death. You are now going to see who is going to be our number one. Come on in. Tell everyone who you are.
My name is Ernest Ramirez. I'm the father of Ernesto Ramirez Jr., and I'm honored to be here with you, Polly.
We're thrilled. Children's Health Defence unanimously chose you, your bravery, the way you speak out about your son. Tell everybody briefly, we do know your story, but there may be some watching that do not. What happened to your son?
Well, being a single parent, I was concerned with the COVID, and they lied to us, said it was safe and effective. So we went to get the vaccine, and 5 days later, after his first dose of Pfizer, he died suddenly. He just collapsed. And the government denies it. Everyone, no one wants to, admit to the wrongdoing. And I mean, it just, I was upset. I got suicidal. The good Lord put me in this path to try to protect other children. So I do this to honor my son, and I know he'd want me to protect other kids. That's the reason I do this. We have to protect one another.
Yes, we do. Would you sign your son's name as number one, please, on the Children's Health Defence bus? We filled it up, quite a few, I don't know how many, 20, 25, just from that small visit of COVID deaths and injuries. We went back, we got the bus ready, and we were ready to go. We set the tour, we had it all figured out where we were going to go, and we officially launched. So everybody, we will be live on chd.tv. Sign up for the bus alerts, and we'll be going live tomorrow with stories. We're on the road, we're going out. All right?
Yeah!
They said it was safe and effective and necessary, and it was none of those three, really, as we're finding out now.
So after you get the shot, you're told to go wait in a chair for about 20 minutes.
The lady's like, Natalie, you're free to go. And I was like, no. I said, no, I'm not. I was like, my heart rate is, sorry.
Within 15 minutes, I noticed that I was starting to slur my words. 40 minutes after I took that shot, I felt like I was on fire inside.
Like fire from within.
Like my skin was on fire from head down to my toes.
Kind of if somebody's pricking you with little knives all over your body at the same time.
My knees started buckling.
I couldn't stand up. I fell to the ground and I went unresponsive.
I was on the floor convulsing.
Within 3 hours, I was in the hospital. My left side just drooped.
You could see my whole left side of my face would droop. I still can't smile.
And then I started having a seizure.
Have you ever had seizures before?
No, I'm previously healthy.
My blood sugar was over 1,400. My organs were failing. They told my husband I wasn't going to make it. You know, they were like, how long has she been diabetic? And he's like, never. Like, she's not a diabetic.
My throat is tingling and I'm covered in hives. She says we can't give her intravenous Benadryl. We can't give her intravenous steroids because it will stop the vaccine from working.
Well, I asked him, well, should I get the next one? He said, yeah, either that or die from COVID. You gotta be kidding me. I just had a stroke.
That following morning, I had the worst, most irritable pounding in my head. Bah, bah, bah.
Shaky, weak, uneasy, shortness of breath, random chest pain.
My memory was shot. Short-term memory, long-term memory.
A couple of days later, I had tremors in all 4 of my limbs.
My talking was just all crazy. I was very disoriented and dizzy. Come to find out, they think it was a mini stroke. And then from that day on, so this is a week, 7 days after my vaccine, I was having 3 or 4 seizures every single day.
I was getting hospitalized like every other week because of my chest pains.
I left there 9 days after being admitted with a non-working pancreas, on steroids, on beta blockers.
Chronic inflammation, demyelation, polyneuropathy. I have tinnitus, heart palpitations, tremors.
Tremors, you know, my chest was burning, dizziness.
I had Guillain-Barré, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, pericarditis.
Myocarditis.
Myocarditis. It's a inflammation and damage of the heart muscle known as myocardium. This inflammation can reduce my heart's ability to pump blood. It can also cause chest pain, shortness of breath, and rapid or regular heart rhythms, which fits perfectly with what I was experiencing back in California and even now.
It was just crazy, the craziest symptoms. During my menstrual cycle, I have huge clots that I've never had before.
A long blood clot in my sinuses.
This is the bottom of my lung that is filled with blood. That's the day. Yeah. Every time that I see a specialist or see someone new in the health or medical field that acts as if they're trying to help me and figure this out, they just push me off to the next person. And I've already reclotted once.
Those are my eyes. This is a huge tumor, about
huge,
the size of a softball behind my eye. They said it was the most aggressive cancer that they've seen, but got bounced around from hospital to hospital because nobody ever seen this type of tumor before. It's usually found in little kids and also dogs post-rabies vaccinations.
Interferon is one of the most important chemicals that many of our cells make. There's a type 1 interferon, and this particular spike protein from this virus decreases that interferon, which, when that spike protein is present, those cells suppress that interferon, and now it can't recruit your other immune cells to fight off important things like cancer.
I'm David Rasnick.
And what are your qualifications?
I have a PhD in chemistry, and I've worked in the pharmaceutical biotech industry for 20 years, and I've worked since then over 20 years in cancer research. Normal cancers prior to a couple of years ago, for as long as we've known about cancers, are slow. It takes to develop. Blood cancers, typically a few years for blood cancers, and decades for solid tumors like colon cancer, breast cancer, and things like that. These mRNA and DNA vaccines, these genetic injections, are devastating the immune system. We know that's happening already, But now we're seeing a consequence of that devastated immune system. It's an acceleration of tumors that were probably already in you to begin with, were benign, probably go away on their own. You'd never know you had it. But once your immune system is really, really depressed, now these things can develop rapidly.
Not only that, but the spike protein itself binds to certain families of genes in our body that suppress cancers. It's a whole family of genes called P53. And there are several studies showing that this spike protein can bind to that tumor suppressor family, and then that tumor suppressor family can't function properly, which allows cancers to take off.
We're destroying their immune systems to the point where they can't resist the cancer, and the cancer cells are now growing like they are in cell culture. They don't have anything impeding their ability to proliferate.
I reported to VAERS right away in May. And again, you're just it feels like you're just a number, and it's just a data collection. It's not even a follow-up to, see if you're okay. They get to judge. They get to judge whether or not this is my new normal, and this is what I have to fight every day.
This is better than what I was before.
She was in the bed for basically a year before she could actually talk and be present, because it was so bad. I mean, she would have anywhere from 15 to 30 mini seizures throughout the day.
Yeah, starting to go into one.
Are you having an episode right now?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Do you need me to stop filming?
Nah, yeah, I'm okay. I'll be all right. What else am I supposed to do?
I know.
Sorry. This is the life that I have now. I can't even have my grandbabies. Babysit my grandbabies. Sorry.
Is he okay?
Yeah, he's fine. He's just flaccid.
No, his head is sonic. I can't push it back. And
this is to Moderna.
Yeah.
So this is not a quality of life. It's when you start thinking, okay, how do I end my life?
Life's different. We're fortunate, blessed that Tim is alive and, doing as good as he's doing today. And they credit that really. All of the doctors had one thing they agreed on, and that's because he was in such good health before he had the shots.
I went from, squatting with a bar and 45s on each side and playing college softball to my physical therapy was me sitting on a table trying to lift my leg up.
I spent 31 months sitting in an infusion center getting IVIG, that's intravenous immunoglobulins, just where I can do my everyday living.
My life will never be the same ever again. It took driving away. I'm a professional photographer, and that creative niche in my brain still doesn't function at all.
I just want to find someone that will help me get well and try to live the best life that I can with my family and my children.
And this is about your sister?
It is about my sister.
Okay, tell us what happens. Take us back to when this occurred.
And unfortunately, the story's really short. That's it. She takes the shot. 10 days later, she's dead. Her daughter got her heart starting. This is the hard part. And the EMTs came. They put her in the ambulance. I believe they had to start her heart again. They took her to the hospital, and they diagnosed a brain aneurysm. The reason I'm here, she can't speak for herself, and it has to stop. It has to stop. These things have to be off the market because they are dangerous. And you know what? Michael's one of the lucky ones because she's not suffering like a lot of other people are from these vaccinations.
One Moderna.
My son, Victor Samoes, he was killed by the Pfizer vaccine. He only took one shot. He took it on April 20th, 2021. And on the morning of the 16th day, he passed away suddenly. He had been feeling chest pains in the morning, around 1 o'clock in the morning, and he called 911. He had a jaw pain. He also had a racing heartbeat.
He called 911. The medics arrived. He went downstairs from his apartment where he was living in Seattle, and he was sitting on the bench. They started taking his blood pressure. His girlfriend arrived. He says, "This is my girlfriend," and he collapsed. He became unresponsive. The medics worked on him. They took him to the ER, and he passed away. So now we are a bereaved family. We are lost without our son. We'll never be the same. Our lives are gray. They'll never be bright again. I cry every day. My husband goes to the cemetery every day. These are, people don't realize, you lose a family member, oh, move on. You don't move on.
This is my stepbrother, Robert Weeks Jr. He received a shot for COVID on Friday. And
His first shot?
Yes, his first shot. And was found dead on Sunday.
6 or 8, 9 months before he had the J&J vax. They said, but you have to be boosted. Went to the nearby pharmacy, and all they had was the Pfizer booster. He took it on that day. He had a blood clot to the lung and died instantly.
She didn't feel well at all after the booster. And about 2 days after her booster, she collapsed. Her legs were completely paralyzed. She had no feeling in her legs. And she was even incontinent. She fell on the floor and they found her face down in her own urine and feces, almost dead. I mean, she barely had a pulse. I said to the doctor, I said, "I'm begging you, please give her a chance." She had a port that went directly to her heart, and it developed an infection, and she died.
My wife has passed away, and the doctors attributed her passing away to getting the vaccine. She started having heart problems. Her blood pressure kept dropping every time she would stand up. They put a pacemaker in her thinking it was her heart, but it wasn't. And everything was fine before we got the shots. Moderna.
And did you take two?
Two. And here I am. This is the 4th time I've had COVID, and I got both of the shots, no boosters, but both of the shots as well. Why did I get the COVID 4 times if I got something that's supposed to stop it? So much for it working. It may kill us, but it's not helping to keep the virus out of us.
I'm pretty sure the only person that can call someone home is the Lord. And these people are playing a role of God right now and taking lives, and you cannot do that. The benefit didn't outweigh anything. You can't, pick and choose, who should live, who should die, when the side effects are severe and deadly. 1,200 people died from the trial. Nobody knew. Nobody still knows about it. And justice has to be served. My husband can't go down as a statistic on a medical journal somewhere. He deserves far more. The ill that are vaccine injured deserve far more. And the people that lost their lives.
That's right. Deserve more.
I have really good news. Today, our nation has achieved a medical miracle. We have delivered a safe and effective vaccine in just 9 months. This is one of the greatest scientific accomplishments in history.
The vaccines, let me say it again, are safe. They are safe. And they are free. And they are effective. And it is that simple.
The pandemic may have begun in China, but we are ending it right here in America.
People are literally being mind controlled with very sophisticated technology and subliminal programming and media persuasion, where people they really like and admire are absolutely encouraging them to do something. And they can't fathom that it could be dangerous. They just can't believe that the government would lie in a way that would kill millions of people or disable millions of people. They can't fathom that.
If you hadn't been vaccine injured or you didn't have a loved one and you understood that they were vaccine injured, you didn't know about how dangerous vaccines could be, right? Remember that for 100 years, the American public has been inculcated with these ideas: vaccines are safe and effective, vaccines are safe and effective, vaccines are safe and effective. And the information about vaccine injury had been censored for a long time. Most Americans and most people around the world would have had no idea that if you got a vaccine, you could become paralyzed, you could have a stroke, you could have a neurodegenerative injury, you could die. Most people would not enter into their consciousness that it could be that severe.
I'm Claire Dooley. I'm 24 years old, and I'm the videographer on the Children's Health Defense Bus.
Hi, my name is Caroline McGrady, and I am the outside manager for the Children's Health Defense Bus.
I was expecting a lot of COVID vaccine injuries, I think, but what I didn't expect was the hospital protocol deaths. I remember the first week I came on the bus, I was just sitting there in shock.
At first, when we were listening to these stories, it was easy to isolate it to the specific hospital. But once we kept traveling and hearing the same exact story, we were absolutely shocked. And it wasn't just one, it was all. Like, all of the hospitals were doing the exact same thing.
They all came on, they all told the same exact story, and all these commonalities started rising out of it. But whenever one person after the next, after the next, after the next comes in and says the same exact thing, you really start wondering, did these people really die of COVID?
You're doing a great job, Grace. Grace had Down syndrome, as you know, and she could do everything. She could public speak, she played violin, she could read, write. There's nothing she couldn't do. Oh, you're doing great. I taught her how to drive a car. She deer hunted with me.
I'm driving this car.
What happened that Grace ended up even going to hospital in the first place?
Yeah, that's maybe the most important question. What happened is on the morning of October 6th, Grace's oxygen saturation dropped to 88%. And we perceived that as an emergency because the protocol said if that number drops below 94%, admit yourself to the hospital.
Did she look like she needed to go to hospital?
No, she had a cold. Emergency room physician said, well, I think as a preventative, let's just check Grace into the hospital for 3-4 days, put her on oxygen and a steroid, and get her home. And I thought, well, that makes sense. We got into the room shortly after midnight on October 7th. The first day was just a blast. I had a fun day with my best buddy. She was a blessing, Polly. She was a special kid. Now that we have the records, we see that a anesthesia drug called Precedex was started on the 9th. I'm the healthcare power of attorney. Why wasn't I told what they're doing? Precedex is supposed to only be used for 3-4 hours for anesthesia, for surgery. And the package insert for that med says that if you use it for more than 24 hours, it causes acute respiratory failure. And if you look at Grace's death certificate, go all the way to October 13th, and her death certificate says first cause of death, acute respiratory failure with hypoxemia. So it's a cause and effect for using Precedex for more than 24 hours. She was on Precedex from October 9th through 6:37 p.m. the day of her death. That's 5 full days.
I'm a medical coder.
And what does that mean?
You look at medical records, every kind of medical record, all the diagnostics. You take that information and you put it into a code, which goes to insurance. And that's how hospitals and physicians get paid. So if I do my job right, then the physician and the hospital make the most money and they don't get sued for fraud.
I worked the ER during the start and height of COVID. I would hear patients come in if they'd have COVID, They weren't sick enough to be admitted, but sick enough to get maybe some treatment. I knew doctors were doing steroids occasionally just to help with some of the respiratory and coughing. But I would hear doctors say, sorry, there's no treatment. There's nothing we can do for you.
By probably August or September, we started to see the waves of patients coming in with this respiratory illness. Even then, because I think the hospitals were trying to avoid overcrowding the system, that we were not admitting patients like we should have. And so I think that was kind of the first look into how we could have done things differently, because these patients still had respiratory symptoms, but they were not severe enough. So they were being sent home and told to come back when symptoms got worse or they were unable to breathe.
What was happening in the hospital was we stopped treating people. We essentially told everyone to stay home, right, and not come into the hospital.
And then within the next, so many days of patients being sent back home, they were coming back to the hospital system in such bad shape. The ones that were coming through the door were immediately, put on a ventilator, different protocols were being utilized, and we started to notice very quickly that the success rate of these patients getting better was next to zero.
Did he have one of those things on his finger to test the oxygen level?
He did, yes. Yeah, our primary care doctor told him that if it gets below 88 to go into the emergency room for supplemental oxygen.
So the big difference came in that my husband's pulse ox dropped really low.
They took his vitals and his oxygen was 91, and they told us that we need to go to the hospital.
His oxygen was like in the 80s, so I was like, okay, now I panicked.
She didn't want to go to a hospital, but like so many other people, we didn't know what else to do. We were following the guidelines at the time as far as when your oxygen reaches a certain point, you should go in.
I didn't know, and no one told us that he could have just had oxygen at the house.
He was having slight chest tightness.
If you can't breathe, go to the hospital. That was all they told him.
He wasn't improving, and it got low enough to the point that we needed to go to the hospital.
And on the 7th, I finally said, I think that we need to go to the hospital. And this was a hospital that we had doctored at for 30 years. We had our babies there.
Let's get you to the hospital. Let's nip this in the bud. Let's get better and we can come home.
And the doctor literally that was treating him said, stay out of the hospital because they're killing people.
So I was on the phone with my daughter at the time. She was in Savannah, Georgia. And she said, Mother, you've got to call 911. And my husband is hearing us talk, and he said, no, don't call 911. If they take me to the hospital, they will kill me.
And so I made the worst decision in my entire life. I called 911.
The last time I saw her was 5 days after that appointment with the doctor. And when she was heading out the driveway, I could see her face through the back window, lying on the gurney. As they were headed to the hospital, they wouldn't let me go with her.
And I met her at the ambulance bay back by the ER. I never thought that was going to be the last day that I saw her.
I called and said, when, can I come and see you? No, you can't even come to the hospital at all.
Did you get to see your son at any point at all? Not at all.
They didn't allow us in the hospital because they said of COVID, but when he passed, they let us in the hospital with all the COVID patients.
At the time, the hospital, of course, wasn't allowing anybody in as support or to advocate for her.
Okay, well, we need to go ahead and admit him. You have to leave. I said, I want to bring my kids in. We'll wait in the lobby or whatever. No, you have to leave. We're going to admit him.
So I'm all alone. I have no advocate, no family. And that is unbelievable to be in a hospital like that situation.
Yeah. And you weren't allowed to have anyone there.
And you might be sleeping, you're feverish, you're weak. It's just a very scary time.
We were so quick to put him in that, we didn't hug him or kiss him.
I should have been allowed to, somebody should have been allowed to be with him, at all times.
They told me, you can't see me longer, tell him bye. And I ran out to the parking lot and cried for about an hour because I'm thinking, it's the last time I'm seeing him.
We never were allowed to see her. We didn't get to say goodbye. We didn't get to be part of her care.
I said, well, I'm his healthcare advocate, and he needs me with him. And they said, well, you can't go back. You have to get out of here. It's a COVID ER. And he has COVID. I said, well, I live with him. And then they said, get out of this hospital. If you don't get out of this hospital, we're going to call the police and have you taken to jail.
He was transferred to the COVID ward, and I was told there was no visitation, and I never saw him again.
taking care, of a lot of patients coming in, I saw a lot of isolation. A lot of people really, truly did not know what was going on with their families.
For the patients, they're being told that they're not allowed to have any support people in the hospital with them. So they're facing surgeries, they're facing procedures all alone. And they don't know what that outcome is going to be, and they don't have anybody to advocate for them.
I didn't notice right away the harm of these protocols until I had to tell family members that they couldn't come to the bedside of their dying loved ones. That, to me, was a crime against humanity and a violation of my oath that I knew right away should not have been happening. We isolate people in prison. We put them in the brig when they've done something wrong to torture them. And that's what I felt like I was being forced to do when I had to tell my patients' family members when they couldn't come into the hospital to be near their dying loved ones.
Nobody contacted us for a while.
We kept trying to call,
My one sister's the only vaccinated one, and they would only talk to her because they didn't say this, but she was the vaccinated one. I'm the healthcare proxy. They had my information, and they wouldn't communicate with me. They were just going through my mother and my sister.
He asked to talk to his wife. The nurse said, I'll have her call you. She called back in 2 seconds, and they said, he can't talk. He doesn't want to talk.
And so for about 10 days, he went without any word from his family at all.
Let me have my phone back. I need to text my family. And so I text my husband, oh my God, they've come in to put me to sleep and on the ventilator. And I could tell I had no choice. I don't know how I could tell, but I could tell. And I couldn't swing my legs out of the bed and get out of there, to be honest. I don't think I could have by then. So I told my family, please find out, please pray for me. I love you all. And so I said, can I wait for a reply? Because she grabbed my phone again. I mean, she was adamant about getting this phone out of my hands and getting it in a closet in my purse. And she said, no, there's no time. So she takes my phone and she turns it off because I saw that emergency, like when you swipe it off. And she put it in the closet.
They hadn't given her water all day or food. She was like, water, I need water. She kept repeating that, and they refused to give it to her.
Oh, no, she's not going to get water. Well, what do you mean, no, she's not going to get water? No, she's not going to get water. It's the protocol.
Why was she not allowed water?
Well, they said it was the protocol. They said that it was because she had COVID, that COVID patients don't do well with fluids.
She was in the hospital for 10 days. She was never fed. She was never bathed. She was never turned.
Yeah. On the 10th day, they decided to try to feed her.
Well, then Mikey, his son, took him some lunch, probably around noon, some food. And he said what she brought him for breakfast was still sitting on the security guard's desk downstairs.
He was hungry. He was thirsty. He was texting his wife he was hungry. He was thirsty. They did not care.
They stopped food 5 days before the vet because they know that what they were going to do.
I don't know if they fed him.
He wasn't fed. He received no nutrition. The only fluids he was getting was through an IV.
She wasn't getting water. She wasn't getting food because
I would beg them for water every day.
We didn't know. We brought her for care, and she was murdered. You can't survive on 13 and a half cups of water in 11 days. It's not possible.
The ones that are still able to text their loved ones are asking for water. I need water. Isn't that one of the first things you do when someone's sick, is hydrate them?
And then at some point, okay, we're going to give her something just to calm her down. Maybe she has pain. So they suggested morphine, and I thought, well, morphine. So then my sister says it's okay, it's for pain. So, okay, it's for pain. But she said, but we on the lookout and watch out if they try to give it too frequently, and then if they increase the dosage, then there's a problem and an indication that they're trying to expedite the patient's death. So
she's a hospice nurse.
Yeah.
Lorazepam, which is a benzo, fentanyl, which is an opiate, propofol.
They administered fentanyl, and the amount of drugs that were being pumped into his body, I knew.
We found out after his death that he was given tons of antipsychotic medication while he was in there. He was on medication that sedated him. None of this was asked to us as his family.
Fentanyl
morphine. He was literally on Precedix when I look in the medical records. You're only supposed to be on that for 24 hours. He was on it, I believe, his entire stay.
70 different medications that I counted.
30 different other drugs in 13 days.
And then he would get anxiety. Well, why did he get anxiety? Because you just told him he's probably going to die. So they use that as an excuse then to get them Ativan and other anxiety drugs.
Fentanyl, they hit him on propofol. Had him on fentanyl, propofol. He was on sedatives, paralytics, and he was pretty much like that for 9 days. He was sedated. They gave him Ativan a few hours before they ventilated him, and that's around the time he got the Ativan is where in his records that he has notes that they, were saying he's unaware of the risks to be intubated. So I don't know how you can have informed consent if you're drugged.
And so then I told her I wanted him to have ivermectin. I wanted them to do the FLCCC protocol. And she said, I don't know what that is, but we don't do it. And I said, what do you do? And she said, well, we give remdesivir. And I said, well, do not give it to my husband. And she said, why not? And I said, because it kills people.
My mom was murdered by the hospital COVID protocols in 2021. I took her to the hospital, and from that point on, they just unleashed a series of protocols and gave her remdesivir against her will and did all kinds of things against her will. So the whole time I was fighting to get in to save my mother because I am a nurse and I am completely capable of saving her, and they would not let me in. They insisted that it's our policy, you can't come in.
For doctors and nurses on the front lines, a new weapon in the fight against COVID-19. An antiviral medication proven effective in clinical trials. Dr. Fauci announced the breakthrough at the White House.
The data shows that remdesivir has a clear-cut, significant, positive effect in diminishing the time to recovery. This is really quite important.
When I dropped her off, I said, make sure you tell them not to give you remdesivir and that you just need oxygen. So when she got to the hospital, they put 2 liters of oxygen on her on just a simple nasal cannula, and her SATs went up to like 95%. So I was like, okay, she's gonna be fine. She just needs oxygen. She'll be there a couple days and then she'll be better and she'll come home. They gave her remdesivir at 2 a.m. that first night that she was there. And then I didn't know about it and she didn't know about it. And then 4 days go by, she keeps getting remdesivir and neither one of us know about it. And then on day 4 is when she completely declined. And when I called that night, I said, what are you giving her? They named off all these medications and then they said remdesivir. And I said, why are you giving that to her? She told you not to give that to her. And they said, well, it's our protocol. My heart sank. I knew at that point my mom was gonna die. And so if they had just given her oxygen like she said in the beginning, she would still be here.
The combination of remdesivir and being intubated, definitely. I mean, we're talking about
Sedatives.
And sedatives, setting them up. These patients many of them were intubated and put on remdesivir. They had developed kidney failure from the remdesivir fairly quickly. And, 80% of these patients never made it home.
After a few doses, it'll cause kidney failure and liver failure, and you fill up with fluid, and then you're sentenced to a respirator, and then you end up in the morgue most of the time.
And they said to my husband, the only hope is remdesivir and a vent. And I was like, no, that's not happening. I said, you gave me a terminal diagnosis. I would like the right to try ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and budesonide. And I want my priest to be allowed to come in here to give me my final sacraments. No to both. And they said, I will let your priest come in if you agree to remdesivir.
So he negotiated.
And I said, get the priest in quick. Get the priest in very quick. He came the next day with first thing, and gave me my sacraments. He blessed the room.
And I knew that if she got the spiritual uplift from that it would give her the strength to move forward no matter what happened.
Did they give you more remdesivir then?
Just the 1 dose. I never feared dying of COVID. I feared being murdered in the hospital at that point.
They gave him remdesivir, but not just 5 days. They gave him 10 days worth of remdesivir, even though he had known kidney issues.
I found out what he was on. They said remdesivir. I said, take him off immediately. That doctor promised me that he took my son off that medicine until the last day. And then he said that his kidneys were closing down. And I said, I thought you took him off. And he said he was on the full dose.
A few days later, they started telling me that they're watching his kidneys closely. And I was like, well, why are we watching his kidneys? You know, he didn't go in with any kidney problems. Did you give him remdesivir? And they wouldn't answer me.
We started prescribing it, and the hospital had a protocol about remdesivir. They knew that it caused kidney damage.
We had a dialysis machine running all the time in the ICU because of the renal failure. People would come in with normal kidneys and then end up in renal failure. That could have been remdesivir, could have been renal injury from dehydration and lots of things, but protocols, it looked like protocols because it was so consistent. It was consistently happening.
We had several new dialysis patients admitted to our clinic who had been hospitalized with COVID. And they were told in the hospital that COVID had shut down their kidneys. But by that time, I was pretty savvy and I knew what was happening. They were getting remdesivir, the drug that some nurses call run, death is near, and that was shutting down their kidneys.
COVID itself is not a kidney disease, but remdesivir causes kidney failure. In animal trials, a third of animals receiving remdesivir had kidney failure and then organ failure.
My patients seemed to decline after remdesivir, especially after more than 2 doses.
They all ended up with kidney failure within a few days.
Were you with her when she died?
In the last 15 minutes. They finally let me in the last 15 minutes. My mom was beautiful. She was 6 feet tall. She was about 180 pounds, redhead, curly hair, vibrant. And then when I got there, she had been completely stripped of all her dignity. Her hair was matted. She was laying in her mess. If I had been there with her, I would have taken care of all of that. I would have stayed with her in the hospital the entire time.
In viral illnesses, you want to start an antiviral as soon as possible upon first symptoms, within the first day or 2 or 3. We knew that people who entered the hospital, typically around day 7 or 8, there was this viral replicative phase, and then there was this inflammatory phase that ensued.
Think of it. Most people got to the hospital usually day 7 to 8 in their disease. That's when the virus has essentially stopped replicating.
And I've been taught in my undergrad, my bachelor's degree program for nursing, that you do not administer an antiviral more than 24 to 48 hours post-symptom onset for a viral infection. This medication was being given to patients who were hospitalized with COVID, usually not until between 10 and 12 days post-symptom onset.
So it had no rational, logical sense to use a very expensive, somewhat toxic intravenous medicine for days at a time when there's no live virus, when it's an inflammatory condition. So just based on logic, it made no sense.
We have evidence showing that the administration of antivirals more than 2 days post-symptom onset causes more harm than good. The risk-benefit analysis does not correlate.
The moment she went in, they started her on remdesivir in the emergency room.
I had written, even before we went in, like, get oxygen, get vitamin C, get all of these different protocols, get steroids, get antibiotics, whatever you need, but no remdesivir, no intubation. And that was the very protocol that they wanted to do.
This is our policy and our protocol, and this is the medicine that works the best.
They immediately put him on remdesivir. And as soon as they put him on that, everything started to go downhill.
They gave me an IV dose of remdesivir every day for 5 days. I got sicker and weaker and sicker and weaker.
As soon as he gets remdesivir, within 24 hours, everything starts plummeting.
The page of his medical shows that he got 2 doses of remdesivir and 2 doses of bursenetib, the generic for remdesivir, in 1 day. So technically 4 doses in 1 day and 2 more the next.
And all his symptoms
he needed oxygen. That's all he needed, oxygen.
Quote, he texted me this. They have to figure out a reason to keep me because his oxygen was okay. His numbers were okay. And the reason was remdesivir.
This was an experimental use product. And I knew that each one of those doses was over $3,000.
Are COVID patients worth more to hospitals when it comes to money? According to Section 3710 of the CARES Act, hospitals are reimbursed by the government an extra 20% for each hospitalized Medicare patient.
So they're incentivizing hospitals to use toxic drugs which kill patients.
There was a huge financial gain for the hospitals when these patients would die early into the treatment, and they were dying within a day or two of being on these protocols. But you know what? The hospital got their money already up front because I authorized that with the insurance companies for the hospital to get paid.
Any patient that was admitted that had a COVID diagnosis, they got a 20% bonus for that. If they were put on remdesivir, that was a new technology, and new tech codes can apply for an additional 20% bonus in payment because of the risk of an unproven technology.
Medicare pays hospitals based on a diagnosis-related group code, or DRG. Every patient is given one when they're discharged, and it accounts for what they were diagnosed with and treated for. There's no COVID-19 specific code yet, but PolitiFact, a nonpartisan fact-checking website, says the average Medicare payment for patients with similar conditions was $13,297. For more severe cases like use of a ventilator and longer stays, the average payment was $40,218. On top of that, the new federal CARES Act says Medicare will pay an additional 20% on top of the original DRG.
They would get the lump sum payment. So the faster someone dies under that protocol, the more money the hospital will make if you look at just the economics of that. You know, if they stay the full 2 weeks, well, they will make less money. If the patient is able to die faster, you make more money.
Back up a little bit, because remember there was a 3-month lockdown that starved allopathic medicine, big medicine, of any money for 3 months. And so then they became desperate to be able to make budget in any way. And so you have the multi-layered incentives for a diagnosis of COVID, for an admission of COVID, for a treatment of COVID, a death from COVID is financially incentivized. Those perverse incentives mean that people that didn't even have anything to do with COVID, they were never in the hospital with COVID for the first place, we're going to give you a diagnosis of COVID.
Probably seen it on social media, a claim that hospitals are falsely tagging patients with COVID-19 to make more money from Medicare, which is funded by your tax dollars.
Well, when they went from you had to have symptoms to get the PCR test, there was hardly any patients that had it. And then when they switched to now it's readily available, the CDC says that every hospital can do their own testing. And so we brought it in-house, and hospitals didn't have to send it to a different lab and wait a week to get the results back. Then we could do it all the time. So then 80% of our patient population became COVID positive, whether they had symptoms or not.
A hospital Medicare patient with pneumonia without COVID is worth about $7,700 to the hospital. But with COVID, that reimbursement jumps to over $9,200. A Medicare patient with acute respiratory distress syndrome requiring a ventilator, without COVID, the bill, $34,000. But with COVID, that Medicare patient now worth almost $40,000.
I got very upset when I brought the test up, and we started running hundreds and thousands of them a week. We were having sometimes up to 30% were positive, and the crossing times on these, which means we had to run them for long times before we could even detect this virus, quote unquote. And so people were being thrown into the hospital with something that was very likely not true.
You know, you have to wait 10 days after the first test before you do the test again to make sure you're not positive. Well, tests were being done on people who were positive every day, and all those numbers were being sent to public health as new numbers, even though it's from this one same person.
The other thing that went very wrong is when I would report a negative test, they would send me 5 more samples to run. And I said, well, I've already done it. And they said, doesn't matter, keep running them. I had got to up to 10 specimens per patient per day to run. And what I couldn't understand, because in normal cases, you don't run things multiple times over and over, I realized later that they were fishing for positives.
When you run a PCR test and you simply allow the machine to run all the way out to 35, which it does all the time, and then count any sample you want to that reaches a certain amount of amplification as a positive without knowing where zero is, then of course you're going to have this 60% false positive rate.
The ones that were coming up at 38, 48, 40, 42 cycles were probably just garbage that was out in the environment.
And the doctors would even put in the documentation, I don't understand this. It's like the patient doesn't have anything I can treat. I keep doing the PCR test. It keeps coming up positive, and they have nothing wrong, and that would happen. They would do like 6, 7, 8 tests, and it would be positive, but the patient would have nothing wrong with them, and the doctor would be really confused. Sometimes they would do 4 or 5 tests, and they would get a bunch of negatives, and then they would get one positive, and they would take the positive and then treat the patient for COVID. I watched people who came in who all of a sudden got a positive PCR test. When they ran their cortisol levels, they went through the roof. These people, and when your cortisol goes up, your immune system plummets. People were literally being scared to death. And they pressured people to get on ventilators too, because that upped the money count.
The data shows that remdesivir has a clear-cut, significant positive effect in diminishing the time to recovery.
There's numerous trials showing that it had no benefit at all. And the thing about the evidence base for remdesivir, if you separate out the trials that were done by independent, non-pharmaceutical industry conflicted investigators, you find no benefit. The only ones showing benefit are those with high conflicts of interest with the pharmaceutical industry.
And what's interesting is the NIH panel of something like 23 so-called voting experts. I think something like 18 of the experts had financial ties to Gilead. So that's called a conflict of interest. That means, we're interested in the money and not in patients.
The primary endpoint was the time to recovery, namely the ability to be discharged.
Well, first of all, I'm glad you brought up remdesivir, horrible drug. I mean, unfortunately, I used it in the beginning because I didn't know any better, and that was with the accepted drug. But it was in November of 2020, the World Health Association actually put out a warning saying that remdesivir was dangerous for liver disease and kidney shutdown. And in the U.S., somehow that was ignored.
Remdesivir brought in $873 million for Gilead in the quarter.
The World Health Organization, a number of doctors in an article in the British Medical Journal did say that they do not recommend remdesivir, and that is Gilead Sciences treatment that we know has been used in hospitals.
Interim results from the trial now show that the other 2 drugs in the trial, remdesivir and interferon, have little or no effect in preventing death from COVID-19 or reducing time in hospital.
This will be the standard of care, the standard of care, the standard of care.
Gilead had actually applied for a new tech bonus payment for remdesivir. So the new code was created for remdesivir in April. And that's actually what launched the hospital protocols. Because people were actually doing well when they were treating them with hydrochloroquine, which came from Operation Warp Speed, actually, and the national stockpile of hydroxychloroquine. Hospitals got a free donation of that, like right at the end of March. And then 3 days later, a few days later, April 1st, the new diagnosis came out. The bonus for remdesivir came out, and it was like a line in the sand. We stopped azithromycin and hydroxychloroquine, and we went straight to remdesivir, where we got the bonus.
According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, the bonus gives hospitals an incentive to use the medications because prior to COVID, hospitals were not typically reimbursed by Medicare for these expensive drugs.
Remdesivir was originally developed to treat Ebola and received emergency use authorization from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration back in May.
There were 4 drugs that were being tested for Ebola. Remdesivir killed more people than placebo, and the Data Safety Monitoring Board had actually stopped the study.
Where literally 53% of the patients died in the failed Ebola trial and was repurposed.
It was a failed Ebola drug because it caused more harm than good in Ebola trials.
It was still on patent. It was Tony Fauci's drug of choice.
The majority of hospital deaths were actually caused by Anthony Fauci because his NIH put out protocols that if the hospital systems adhered to, they got bonuses, big bonuses, lots of money, $3,000 for putting an IV in of remdesivir. Boom, $3,000. But guess what? On top of the entire hospital stay, a 20% bonus. That could be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
The data was so overwhelming that remdesivir killed patients more so than placebo. The drug had to be stopped. And this was published in the New England Journal in the end of 2019.
It's almost inexplicable that we've made it the standard of care here, but you see how that top-down control in this country, these agencies were given inordinate power. It seemed like all doctors shut off their brains and just listened to directions from above without questioning, without skepticism, without resistance. And so you saw that drug being infused into every hospitalized patient, and it's absolutely absurd. There's no scientific basis to use that, no logical or rational reason why we should use remdesivir in every hospitalized patient.
If someone has congestive heart failure, the lungs are filled with fluids. If someone has renal failure, their lungs are also filled with fluids because the kidneys and heart are not working well to get rid of this fluid. And they were putting them on these supplemental oxygen to just push oxygen in there. The ventilator was forcing oxygen in there, and that was collapsing their lungs. And they were dying within a day or two of being on these protocols.
But it's just the money. I mean, the minute they saw they got bonuses from the PCR tests and everything.
Yeah.
It was money. It was the money. It changed. The whole thing changed.
The whole thing. Yeah.
Yes. It wasn't until we started investigating where the COVID relief money was going from the CARES Act that we were able to track that money down from the Department of Human Services to the different agencies, including the CDC and the NIH. And then following where that money was going to hospitals to reimburse them. And what we discovered first was that CMS issued a series of waivers that would allow hospitals to do things that normally they would never be allowed to do. In fact, if they did some of the things that CMS waivers allowed them to do, people could have sued them and just ripped the financial guts out of these hospitals.
I asked a question. I said, what is the prognosis of a person if they get put on a ventilator? And he told me only 20% walk out alive. And then his nurse started crying. She had a daughter named Grace, and she knew if I made that ventilator decision, Grace was going to die. And he said to me, isn't a 20% chance better than no chance?
Ventilators, ventilators, ventilators. I didn't know what they were a few weeks ago. Besides the cursory knowledge, I know too much about ventilators now.
We discovered through that research into the waivers something called DRGs, which are diagnosis-related groups. And that's how the hospitals have been billing. From the beginning, they were taught to bill those with the ICD-10 codes that was established just for COVID. Every single thing the hospital did to a patient was allotted a DRG. If they came into the hospital and they were having trouble breathing, then that diagnosis-related group was assigned, and X amount of money was assigned to that. Then if they were diagnosed with COVID, then another DRG was added and another allotment of funds to that. Sometimes hundreds of DRGs for every patient, and every one of them paid premium dollars to the hospitals. And, when people first started talking about, the hospitals would get paid X amount of money for ventilators, that was just sort of hyperbole for a while until we actually found the DRG that proved it. And that's when we found all the DRGs that paid out all the big bucks for everything they did to people, sometimes up to $1 million a patient.
He was intending on her being ventilated because he knew that if she was ventilated, their hospital stood to gain money upon her death. She said, I want out of this hospital. You guys are killing me. I want out of here. They would not sign her papers to leave the hospital. They wanted her ventilated. They wanted her to die at the hospital.
The third day in there, they put him on a ventilator. And my research shows that most of the hospitals got between $300,000 and $400,000 from the COVID funds for using a ventilator. So, as I view it, a patient that is designated COVID will bring that hospital a medical administration between $1 million and $5 million. They tortured him for 71 days.
Every day they pestered me that she need to go on the vent. They said it's just for a little bit, she's not going to be on it for long. And I asked that if this was your child, would you put her on a vent? And he said yes. And that convinced me that if the doctor would do it to his child, it would be okay for me to do it.
We've had so many stories, I was telling you, and they're horrific.
Yeah.
I mean, horrific.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what you saw when you were in there?
What I saw was everyone in the intensive care unit was, most everyone in the intensive care unit was on the ventilator.
There was talk among all the nurses that those that did go on vents just never came off of them alive. And that was just the general consensus among everybody, that you don't put your loved ones on a vent if you can help it.
Within the first 6 to 7 months, I heard in the hospital, please don't put these patients on a ventilator, because then they have a 50-50 chance of ever getting off again.
It really was a new way of medicine, because in the days, before, if somebody was really, really sick, you told them to go to the ER when they weren't breathing well. But now the ER was the last place you wanted them to be, and no one wanted to go. So I was managing acutely ill people at their home, going to their home, doing whatever I needed to do to treat them.
We'd do anything we could to keep somebody out of the hospital, because people went in the hospital, they would give you remdesivir that could shut down your kidneys. They would put you on a ventilator. Then they had to get on dialysis and kind of circling the drain, and most of them died. Very few got off the ventilator.
We started to notice very quickly that the success rate of these patients getting better was next to zero.
Most of the time they would deteriorate, die. And we lost 1 to 2 patients a day. On the beds were never empty for long.
They have some sort of an intranet for employees, and it's like your very own homepage that everyone sees when you log in every time you go to the computer. So that's where they put the messaging. At one point, they sent out a message that said the FiO2 settings on the ventilators had been killing people, and we don't know how to treat COVID, so we were trying these ventilator settings thinking that that was how we were going to treat COVID, but apparently the FiO2 setting was actually killing people on the vents. So we're going to stop doing that. We learned that was not working, and so we're going to adjust it. And I was shocked by that, because I had already started to hear rumors that patients were being killed on ventilators in the hospital, which made sense to me because we had never had a flu case or a pneumonia case where someone's on a vent for a month and we can't save them.
Nurse that was in charge of the floor, her name was Pam. She came and said, she asked us 3 times, it was with my mother. She said, do we have your permission to vent him? And by the 3rd time she asked, it was really, I was so agitated. I didn't understand. This was day 11. Why, we haven't been asked this. Why are you asking this over and over? And I said to her, unfortunately, I am going to drive home to Birmingham. It's an hour drive. I'm going to get a change of clothes, and I'll be back at 8 p.m. And by the time I walked in the door, they were calling me to say they were venting my father.
On our way to the hospital, we actually talked about ventilators. And he said, I do not want to be put on a ventilator, not unless it's an absolute dire emergency, where I cannot breathe at all. And he said, if they were to do that, I will either call you or I will text you. Either way, I will get a hold of you before they do that. As soon as I got off the phone with the doctor, I texted my husband immediately. I'm like, what's going on? Unread. He didn't text me back. No phone call. And that wasn't like Robert. He would have called me. He would have texted. He would have done something. And I really think that they already had him ventilated.
This doctor called me again, said again I needed to convince my husband to go on a vent. I said, I'm not going to do that. His oxygen's in the 90s. Why would I do that? His next words were, ma'am, to be honest with you, we told your husband that we are going to vent him with or without his consent. I was a little bit jaw dropped and I said, that's illegal. And he slammed the phone down on me. Then I couldn't get a hold of anybody. All communication stopped with my husband. I tried calling the hospital. They told me all the nurses are in isolation. Nobody can take the call. 2 hours later, same doctor called me back, let me know that he vented my husband 2 hours ago.
They were asking us to let him go.
He was also telling us that there was no hope, that only a miracle can save him, that we should start thinking about the worst.
So what were they wanting you to do? Think about that. What were you supposed to be doing?
I guess to unplug him.
The meeting was only with a doctor and an administrator from that hospital. And pretty much she mentioned palliative care.
We never got to talk to a doctor in 24 days. The only nurse practitioner we talked to was from palliative care when she called us to ask us if we wanted him resuscitated, which devastated us right there for them to even ask us that because we felt like he was getting better.
I'm waiting bedside and all of a sudden this woman comes in. She says, I'm here from palliative care. And I said, why are you here? We don't need you here. Oh, they didn't tell you I was coming?
And they wanted us to remove care. And we had already decided we're absolutely not doing that. Like, if God wants to take him home, that can happen, but we're not removing care.
I got a call from another nurse who told me, no, you can't take her. She won't go home. What happens with COVID patients is they stay here. We give them their last meal when they're done getting treatment, and then they die here. And I pretty much said over our dead bodies, will you do that to my mom? She's coming home. And that's all we wanted for her at that point, was to be surrounded by people who loved her and cared about her. We were not going to let her die in that godforsaken evil place.
They called at like 2 a.m. on that Sunday, said, wait, what's going on? And she said, your husband's not going to make it. And I said, what do you mean? I'm bringing him home on Monday.
I got a phone call from the doctor and he told me, he goes, after you left, Kenny got really sick. He goes, can you get back down to the hospital? And I said, yeah, I can get there. I go, my son can take me. So I'm under the impression, that I'm going to be going to see my husband die.
Her and I actually went to the hospital in the morning. Dad passed away. They called us and his breath was really low. And they said that it was coming, and that if we were going to be there when he passed away, that we needed to go now. It was at 6:30 in the morning. And we got in the car, we raced there, ran inside. They wouldn't let us up the elevators because the elevators didn't open to the COVID floor till 7. And I was like, my dad's literally upstairs, like dying, and I need to get up there. And they were like, you're gonna have to go a different route. And so they rerouted us through the hospital, and in the time they did that, we missed his last breath by 2 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
So we walked into the room 2 minutes after he had gone.
I walk in the room and there's my husband laying there dead. And they never told me that he died. They let me walk into a room without any heads up, without any sort of consultation. They just let me walk in and find him laying there dead.
But yes, I was laying in bed with her when she took her last breath because she was vented. So it wasn't really like she took her last breath. It was just when the machine no longer was keeping her alive.
I was able to stay with Kenny. When I got there, he was still warm. So I climbed in bed with him and I held on to my husband for the very last time, and I stayed with him until his body got cold. And then I kissed him goodbye for the last time before I left. And I buried my husband the day after our anniversary.
It was October 6th, and it was in the morning, and they came in, and they took him off the ventilator, and His mom was on one side of the bed holding his hand, and I was on the other side. And he was breathing on his own. I was almost like, oh, I don't know, it was kind of hope. I was like, maybe he is okay. Maybe they're just wrong. And I know she thought it too. But we held his hand for 2 hours and listened to his deep breaths. And it was at 1:09 p.m. when he took his last breath.
They basically told you can watch him die through a window like that. I don't know any spouse that can do that, any child or parent that can do that.
The doctor called Cindy and I shortly after 10 o'clock. So he said, what did you decide relative to the ventilator? And we said, we're not going to give a pre-authorization for a ventilator. While we were on the phone with him, the nurse increased the dose of Precedex to the maximum allowable dose. While we were on the phone, we hung up the phone with him at 10:55. At 10:56, he put an illegal do not resuscitate order on Grace's charge. Jessica called us panicking. She said, Dad, Grace's numbers are dropping like crazy. I said, get the nurses in. She said, I've been trying. They refuse. So now we're on a FaceTime call. And so Cindy and I start screaming, save our daughter. And they hollered back from outside the room, she's DNR. We had no idea. So we screamed back, she's not DNR, save our daughter. No one would come in the room. And we watched her die on that FaceTime call at 7:27 p.m. on October 13th of 2021.
The Washington Post is reporting that some hospitals across the country are considering a do not resuscitate kind of universal policy for virus patients.
One Chicagoan hospital says they want to implement it regardless of the wishes of the patient or their family members.
Mm-hmm. First off, the survival rate of people who have a cardiac arrest in the hospital is very low. Because remember, you've been monitoring the patient the whole time. So if they actually have their heart stop or they stop breathing, you sort of knew they were already pretty sick. So if you're not going to save that many and you're going to expose a lot of people, which will take them out of the system of helping others, it's an idea that in a war zone you would consider. Personally, it's going to be very difficult for me as a practicing doctor to disregard the wishes of a patient or their family and let them die if I have the tools.
When it was time for my father to die in the hospital, they only allowed 2 people to go up there. So he died alone. My father died alone in the worst possible way. And it's horrible because there's no accountability and the guilt and regrets is left to us. You brought your loved one to somewhere that they were supposed to get help.
Well, he told me he loved me when I left the hospital, but the last thing I heard him say, actually, was when the doctor had called me to tell me that they had to intubate him, and I heard her say, what did you want me to tell your wife? And I heard him in a very strong voice, and this is supposedly with oxygen levels in the 50s, but in a very strong voice, he said, tell her I'm trying.
The last words he said to me was, I love you. And that was on the Tuesday after we admitted him on Monday. I never really got to talk to him again after that.
My kids were talking to him, and he was saying something, but they will not put the phone close to his mouth so I can hear him, what he was saying. So that bothers me till today, that I do not know what he told me, what was his last word to me or to us.
What was the last thing your daughter said to you?
Mommy, don't leave me. Mommy, stay. And I waited till she fell asleep, and I kissed her.
They put me on speakerphone with my husband. I told him that I loved him. Not to be afraid. And he said, I love you. He said, I love you twice. And that's the last I ever talked to him.
Go drink this. Yeah. I love you. Now the second one. He said he's gonna eat.
They have at that point they have the CPAP machine on him.
Yeah.
Again, he's by himself. No one there.
He said goodbye to me. He said he's going to ICU. He know he's gonna die. I love you so much.
He did. He said they're gonna vent me. I know I'm gonna die. I love you. Yeah, that's what he said to my mom.
That's why, because she went in with normal vitals, just a cough. I was just a worried mommy. And what they did to her was just what they destroyed her body. Destroyed.
And it's unbelievable, you know, you may be watching this right now and say, can't be. I wouldn't have believed it myself if I hadn't heard it not once, twice, but hundreds and hundreds of times. And still now, as I'm doing this interview, I have 40, 50 a week interviews of COVID hospital protocol deaths. How many did they kill? This is huge. This is mass murder on a level that is difficult to comprehend.
And then he calls me at 7:30 in the morning the next day. And he says, we have oxygen. We have an oxygen concentrator, 2 of them. I have the means to take care of you. I'm gonna come up there and take you out home hospice. And I'm gonna try to save your life. Do you wanna go? And I said, heck yeah. If I stay here, I am a dead woman. My husband comes up there with a letter, a cease and desist letter from our attorney.
They argued with me. A sergeant told me she's in the hospital. She doesn't
fine.
need a welfare check. She's fine.
He said they're gonna have to tase me and drag me out of here. I'm not leaving without you. And when they first started telling you to get out, you looked at him. You said, I'm not going anywhere. You're not gonna kill my wife. She is not your guinea pig. Finally, these 2 doctors came in. She said, he can't take care of you. He can't manage your oxygen. And I asked him, I said, do you have everything you need to take care of me? And he said, yes. And I told her, I said, I trust my husband. And I'm gonna go home with him today because I would rather die at his hands, him trying to save me, than be murdered at yours. And I wanna go home. And the police came in and I told them, like, you're gonna have to decide today, am I a patient or am I a prisoner?
There's no way people can watch all these videos, see this bus tour and all these people, and I mean, you're making it irrefutable that this is happening.
I asked the doctor about ivermectin. He told me no, that it was not proven, and I already knew that there had been over 54 studies proving it worked.
And we requested that we get ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. The hospital refused.
Every single thing that I asked for was denied. Every single thing.
There were so many things he should have had that he didn't. We fought for ivermectin, we fought for so many other things, and they wouldn't do it for us.
I mean, the second you mention ivermectin, it's crazy. You're crazy horse face, even though this has been approved on the WHO as one of the safest drugs.
And then it said, do not administer ivermectin. Patient and family keeps asking.
I said, please give her ivermectin. Please give her hydroxychloroquine. Please give her 10,000 milligrams of liquid vitamin C. This is what we want. My mom requested it. They refused.
What about ivermectin? And he laughed at me. He said, no, we don't use that here.
If you don't have hooves, if you don't wear a saddle to work, and if you don't stand in a field chewing grass, then ignore the noise on social media.
Ivermectin.
Ivermectin.
That's a horse dewormer.
The FDA reminding us all this week not to use medicine intended for barnyard animals.
Here's the thing about the FDA. The FDA does not and never did practice medicine. The FDA determines how companies bring products and pharmaceutical agents to market and how they market them. What we do with them is 100% up to us, but ultimately we are charged with, as the physician, to make the best choice for the patient in front of us, given our experience and our judgment. And we can literally do or use anything we think is essential and important and worth the risk reward for that patient.
Ivermectin is an effective antiparasitic that has been around for a long, long period of time.
Never has more inconvenient science emerged than the science behind ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, because both were off patent, safe, used for decades, ubiquitously available. And so it threatened everything that they were trying to do.
You know, we saw how hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and other treatments were vilified and made very difficult to obtain, where they were, for a lot of people, very, very effective treatments. But if you had an effective treatment, you couldn't have an emergency use authorized vaccine.
The powers that be, the Tony Fauci's of the world, were prohibiting those therapies to come forward, because if there was an effective therapy, then there was no way you could get new patented drugs, biologics, and vaccines approved under emergency use authorization.
So emergency use authorization means that something, it could be a treatment, it could be a vaccine, it could be something else, they are being put into an emergency context, that they have not been licensed, that they are not absolutely known to be effective. They may be effective. And it also means that they're subject to the 2005 PrEP Act, the Emergency Preparedness Act. And basically, one of the most important things is it means you can't sue the manufacturer, you can't sue the doctor that prescribed it, and you can't sue the government officials that made these things happen.
It was wickedly successful. They pulled every trick in that playbook. And by the way, that playbook was invented by the tobacco industry in the 1950s, when science was starting to emerge that was inconvenient to the tobacco industry in terms of cancer and all the harms that tobacco was causing. And so they did that for 50 years, trying to convince the world that tobacco is safe. They used doctors. You know, my favorite cigarette is
Camel. Yes, according to this survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette.
And I saw the same thing, but in reverse with ivermectin. They politicized it and demonized it, and many, many, many people died needless deaths because they didn't know of its efficacy.
Opponents say the science behind ivermectin is clear. In fact, we've been sent a demonstration of just how it defends your bloodstream from the virus.
Don't do it. There's no evidence whatsoever that that works, and it could potentially have toxicity, as you just mentioned, with people who have gone to poison control centers because they've taken the drug at a ridiculous dose and wind up getting sick. There's no clinical evidence that indicates that this works.
That's not stopping popular podcaster Joe Rogan from pushing the drug, in fact, crediting it with helping him recover quickly from coronavirus.
More breaking news this evening. Joe Rogan, an extremely popular podcaster, announced on social media today that he has COVID.
Turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin.
One of those drugs he mentioned, ivermectin, is something more often used to deworm horses.
Well. If it isn't old horseworm Rogan. I'm glad you're well, man.
Bro, do I have to sue CNN?
I don't know, do you?
They're making shit up. They keep saying I'm taking horse dewormer. I literally got it from a doctor.
Our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, sat down for a 3-hour one-on-one with controversial podcast host Joe Rogan last night. Rogan remains a vaccine skeptic despite having caught COVID-19 himself.
Does it bother you that the news network you worked for out and out lied, just outright lied about me taking horse dewormer?
They shouldn't have said that.
Why did they do that?
I don't know.
Rogan telling his 13 million Instagram followers that he was treated with several drugs, and he included ivermectin on the list, a drug used for livestock. The FDA and the CDC warn against using to treat COVID.
Turns out I got COVID. Look, they put a yellow filter on me, too. The kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal You see the original video versus that? I look like shit there. I made a video in 3 days, and it looked too good. So CNN put a filter on it and made me look yellow. This is me outside in Texas, so it's nice and sunny out. And look what they did to my face. They made me look like I was ill. Because I wasn't scared during the entire pandemic, what they would like is that when I did get sick, that I was really sick.
You
and
learned
I
your
became
lesson.
really scared and learned my lesson.
Yeah, that's true.
And instead, it's the worst case scenario for them.
Right.
I bounced back. I was only sick for a day.
That's true. Yeah.
Ivermectin is off patent. It provides no potential for the obscene profits that the pharmaceutical industry is used to enjoying. If ivermectin's efficacy were known to the country and the world, it would have decimated the markets for the entire mRNA vaccine campaign, Paxlovid, molnupiravir, monoclonal antibodies, and remdesivir. You're talking about markets which in some probably total well over $100 billion.
I told people from probably April on, don't go to the hospital. They're killing people in there. Stay away. I don't know what's wrong. I didn't know what was doing it. I honestly didn't know it was the vents. I didn't know it was the remdesivir until I looked into it later and I was able to kind of connect all the dots. But I knew they were killing people.
So the patients were undertreated, mistreated, maltreated, and died because of money. And it boils down to that. It really boils down to that.
These were fundamental violations of human rights.
You know, face it, those that were in hospitals during that time were sitting ducks for, you know, whatever therapy could be foisted on them by hospital administrators who were lining their pockets at the same time.
I'm adamant that, you know, we could never go down this road again where the FDA and the CDC and our politicians and big pharma and et cetera push protocols on us that are not only don't work, but that actually harm, injure, and even kill patients.
We failed as a society. We failed as a medical community. We were misguided by government agencies, the NIH, the FDA, the CDC, and especially misguided by money and protocols. You are not a protocol. You are a human being. You have individual needs. And sadly, so many people succumbed, not to a virus, but to neglect and to wanton greed.
Medical error is the third leading cause of death before COVID. So hospitals have always been dangerous places. Mistakes are made. Over-medication happens all the time. Drug interactions. Surgeries are botched. The shift people don't communicate. There's always risks in hospitals. But during COVID, they became killing fields.
The people are saying that their loved ones were killed in hospitals with the COVID protocol, and that should never have happened, obviously. Do you believe them? 100%. I knew they were killing people. I knew they were killing people in the hospital. I would cry myself to sleep at night. Even thinking about giving my speech today, sorry, there was so much death. It was almost unbearable. Hospitals became the place where people go to die instead of the place where people go to get better. They separated newborns from their moms. They let people die alone without being able to say goodbye. They drugged them and they strapped them down, and people died without being able to say goodbye to their family. Some of them just got a phone call, and that had never happened before the COVID protocol rolled out in 2020. So yeah, when they say they killed people, I agree with them.
Thank God for those brave nurses that spoke about the disgustingness that went on in the hospital, because they really validated what the parents and the people who lost loved ones were saying. Many lost their licenses. I'm told they would never work in the healthcare again because of spreading misinformation, but they were just telling us simply what they saw.
I really think about the heroes who worked inside the hospitals who helped us. And some of them actually snuck patients out the back door of the hospitals. And the nurses knew, because the doctor would write candidate for LTC at the top of the chart. And they knew that that patient was going to be there until a COVID test came back positive, and that patient was going to end up on remdesivir and probably dialysis and a ventilator and would die.
Medical professionals' hands were tied. Those that wanted to save lives were leaving the hospitals in droves. They couldn't do that.
And I just made up my mind, if we had any more COVID patients in the hospital, that I would treat them not with remdesivir, but with this Math Plus protocol. And so that's what I did on early December 21. We had 3 new patients that showed up, probably had the Omicron, but I decided to not give them remdesivir, and I was terminated that day.
They have vilified nurses and doctors who stood up like me and reported the wrong and stood against these mandates.
I can't remain silent. I feel that it'd be a disservice to my patients and to our fellow citizens.
Now we are left with medical facilities full of people who don't have a backbone to stand up and do the right thing. I am very concerned for the future of medicine in this country because we have criminalized and disciplined all of the practitioners who were actually there to protect our patients and families.
I was inundated with people for treatment. And when the first calls came, I heard God say that I was going to do this for his glory, and I was not going to take any payment.
This whole 3-year thing was like a nightmare, but in my case as a doctor, it was really almost like fulfilling a calling because it needed to be treated, and doctors were not treating COVID. And that's really how I think I got involved, and I realized that, hey, this is your real purpose in being a doctor.
Thanksgiving Day, 2022, a nurse called me from that hospital and said, I'm getting ready to take this patient down to X-ray, and I've instructed him to, when I leave him in the chair there by that back door, I'm going to conveniently forget his records, and I've called his family, and they're going to take him. He's going to go out the back door, and he's going to get in the car, and he's going to leave, and we are not going to know where this guy went because he needs to live. And his family picked him up, and they immediately took him home. And we had a doctor working in the area who treated him at home, and he survived. And that's the kind of heroes there were. Some of these people working in the hospitals were not the evil ones that everybody depicts. Everybody working in hospitals, they were actually helping us. They were just heroes. They were absolute heroes.
So the reason that we're doing this documentary, that you're watching this documentary right now, is because of these people. Every single person inside this bus, every single picture that we have here is dead. They're killed by either the COVID shot, an approved shot, vaccination, or by the hospital protocol deaths. And it's because of them that they took one for the team that we know better and will do better as we go forward. So this is just a fraction, this death in here of what is out there. We've only just started to unravel the real count of death. So much death in America and around the world. So much death. And the motivation for myself and the crew on this bus as we traveled around was these faces looking out of us. So in their name, in their honor, we will continue. Children's Health Defense will continue, and we will not stop until there's justice, and this never, ever happens again.
I found out a few months into the tour that I was pregnant. It's such a conflicting feeling because I have this great joy that's been given to me, this tiny little baby. And at the same time, I'm listening to people, you know, have these horrendous experiences of grief. And I think to myself, like, how can I have such joy and these people have had such misery in their lives? This is sad. Sawyer's story was so heartbreaking. I remember I was about maybe 4 weeks pregnant, 5 weeks pregnant whenever we met him, and the mom brought like his urn onto the bus and was sitting here, and she was so upset. I think they had actually tried for years, had finally had their miracle child. They vaccinated him. He passed away one night. Just the pain of that mother. She waited for years to have him. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I've been given this gift. You know, I'm pregnant, and I will not let Sawyer's death be in vain, you know. Like, no vaccine will ever touch my child.
So it totally backfired on them, completely backfired on them, because what they've actually done is they've created so many anti-vaxxers, or whatever it is they want to throw at us.
I have a visceral reaction to the way that we lived for those 2 or 3 years. But out of that came so many people who woke up. There was an awakening. There are people who are asking questions that have never asked questions before.
More and more individuals in society are starting to wake up and are starting to ask really, really hard questions.
The incidence of chronic healthcare problems in children is just ginormous. I mean, all kinds of chronic health issues. There's something wrong. There's something has happened which has changed the healthcare trajectory of our children. And you have to consider the vaccine.
It's a huge profit center for the vaccine companies, and they just want to keep making vaccines for anything that they can, and they want to put it on the schedule. They've weaponized and legalized mandating of these vaccines, and poor children now, just to go to school, have to go through, you know, a battery of injections that many parents don't want them to. They know it's harmful. We now know that unvaccinated children are far healthier than vaccinated children.
You know, my kids were vaccinated, and I never thought twice about it. And then along came COVID, where you actually start questioning things. And now I realize there's none of these childhood vaccines has ever undergone a placebo-controlled trial. We don't know how effective they are. We don't know how safe they are. And I certainly would give great pause, if I had my time again, great pause to vaccinating my children.
Are you done with vaccinations now and no more? Are we done?
Oh, absolutely no more.
Any pandemic, future one? Any scaremongering? Any job? Would either of you ever take any kind of vaccination ever again?
No. No.
Do you think there is such a thing as a safe and effective vaccine out there?
No.
I'm skeptical now about most vaccines. I'm 69. I'll never take another vaccine.
On a weekly basis, I see 4 to 8 people who have suffered an adverse event from the vaccines.
Personally, I would not.
Have you seen the health of the unvaccinated?
Yes. That to me is the most interesting, to actually find populations of totally unvaccinated people and then comparing them to the rest of us. It's quite astonishing.
I've seen and read too much now. Don't think so.
And wow, that's just since COVID began. Thank you. Well, welcome to our side.
Thank you.
Welcome to Saving Babies.
We just had our first granddaughter, first grandchild.
Yeah.
Talk about giving a new baby, what would you do? We kind of feel like we were given a new
You've just been given one, yeah.
Yeah, and like, please.
So you're fairly new to all of this.
My blinders came off in March of 2020 because of COVID, because of some of the things I was seeing. I live in a very different world than I lived in 4 years ago. That's for sure.
I'm praying that our kids are heeding this warning, because that's one of the biggest regrets I have is ever taking a vaccine or allowing my son to be vaccinated.
If I can't be transparent and honest and truthful with my patients, I need to get out of here. I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to join him in the real estate business.
That's what you want?
No, I'm not going to sit there and lie.
No, thank you.
I told Loren, I said, the way things were going, I would rather deliver pizzas than continue in the same model that I was in, not harming a child. So.
Make sure those pizzas are organic.
Yes, gluten-free.
Otherwise, we will be harming the children.
Right.
Is there anything that would make you take a vaccination of any kind ever again?
They would have to kill me. Nothing would make me take it.
My view on vaccines has completely changed.
If you were holding a newborn baby that was for you now, would you give your baby anything?
They would get not one single childhood vaccine, period, full stop, end of story. They would be completely unvaccinated.
So this is bus number 2. Bus number 1 is full. Can't get another name on it. Bus number 2 is full. So how many buses is it going to take?
Everybody needs to know what we have seen on the Children's Health Defense Bus.
As I've said, what happened during COVID could not have happened without propaganda and censorship. And how do we overcome that propaganda and censorship? It's primarily through people not being willing to shut up.
Silence is compliance. That's how they get us to comply, is by keeping us afraid and silent.
It's so important to be telling women my age who are about to go in to getting married, to having children, about the dangers of vaccines.
This is what happened to my father. This is what happened to my daughter. This is what happened to my cousin.
We're trying to raise awareness. We're trying to remember the ones that we've lost in a way to honor them. By telling our story, we're hoping that we can prevent this from happening to other people.
If enough people stand up and say, we did that the last pandemic, we're not going to do it this pandemic.
We are 8 billion people against a few thousand control oligarchs. We will win this.
We will be able to dictate the terms of how we want to live.
This is such an important time for us to document this because the future generations need to know what happened.
Time is now for us to join forces and go forward and fight this because we will win this.
This human experience ties us together. But if you don't use your voice, then we can't, what's a choir? Beautiful voices singing together. And you need to add your voice to those other voices so those symphonic chords can reach more of humanity. People will listen if you speak in a kind manner. Use your voice for good in the world. You're always going to get someone to listen if you use kindness, courtesy, firmness in truth.
If we don't speak out, if we don't become their voices, no one will. So this gives me so much hope that they're not forgotten, they did not die in vain, and that we can save people, and that we can change the tide. We can bring a voice to the silent Holocaust, and we can end it so that this will never happen again.
Everyone's voice is important. And I think using your voice where you can, how you can, and reaching those ears you can will protect generations going forward and will protect children going forward. But we'll always remember those who sacrificed to help us understand that point. And I think that's what's so important about the bus and that experience.
Well, I think the bus is an incredible monument to the human spirit. I think it's a monument to the compassion, Polly, of you and of the team who are on the bus, to listen to people's stories, to sympathize with the people who came. And it's a monument to the truth. Like I've been saying, we're up against propaganda and censorship that has nothing to do with truth. It has to do with some people seeking power and control. So telling the truth is a revolutionary act. And showing compassion and love for people is a revolutionary act. And that's what the bus is.
The scripture that I think every parent should remember is in 2 Timothy. For God has not given me the spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. The power to rise up and speak your truth